The sun hadn't yet risen over the small town of Millersville when Officer Rachel Monroe pulled into the station, steam curling from her coffee and a German shepherd sitting calmly in the passenger seat of her patrol car. Rex, her K9 partner, was already alert, golden brown eyes scanning the horizon as if he sensed the weight of the day ahead. In the 2 years they'd worked together, Rachel had come to trust Rex more than most people. He didn't just obey commands, he seemed to understand them, sometimes before they were even spoken. They had seen some dark things in their time as a team, but nothing that would prepare them for what they were about to uncover. The call came in just after 6:30 a.m. A neighbor had reported yelling from the house across the street, something about a child and strange thuds. It wasn't the first complaint about that address, but every time officers had come, the father, Dale Hensley, had insisted it was a misunderstanding. A former military man and decorated firefighter, Dale had a reputation as a tough love parent, but the town often looked the other way. This time, however, Rachel was the first on the scene. With Rex by her side, she walked up the cracked driveway, noting the shattered flower pots and dented mailbox, signs of a home that had once cared about appearances and had long since given up. Rachel knocked, her knuckles firm against the door. It creaked open slowly, as if unsure whether to allow her inside. Dale appeared, shirtless and bleary-eyed, smelling of alcohol and stale smoke. "Morning, officer." "Everything okay?" he asked with a crooked smile that never reached his eyes. "We got a noise complaint," Rachel said calmly. "Mind if I come in and take a look around?" Dale hesitated for a fraction of a second. That was all it took for Rex to stiffen beside her. His ears went up, and he gave a low growl, not menacing, but pointed. Rachel noticed, and her tone hardened. "Mr. Hensley, please step aside." Reluctantly, Dale moved, and the moment Rachel stepped into the house, the air changed. The smell of blood and fear was faint but unmistakable. Rex growled again, now more fiercely, as if something deep inside him had awakened. They moved through the house slowly, Rachel with her hand near her holster, Rex just ahead of her, sniffing, pausing, leading. In the dim light of the hallway, they heard it, a soft whimper. The sound came from behind a locked door at the end of the hall. Rachel demanded the key, but Dale claimed he had none. She didn't wait. With a swift kick, the door cracked open, and what she saw stopped her cold. A small boy, no older than 8, sat curled in a corner, his arms wrapped around a teddy bear missing one eye. His face was bruised and swollen, one eye blackened, his lips split. The room smelled of urine and mildew. A thin mattress with no sheets lay on the floor. When the boy saw Rachel, he flinched, then saw Rex, and something in his body language changed, not fear, but hope. Rex didn't wait for a command. He moved toward the boy slowly, gently, his entire demeanor shifting. He sat next to him, placing his head on the boy's knee. The boy's trembling fingers reached out and touched Rex's fur, then buried his face in it. Silent tears soaked into the dog's coat. "Get away from my kid!" Dale barked, suddenly charging forward. But Rex spun around in a flash. A growl, louder and more furious than Rachel had ever heard from him, erupted from his chest. He placed himself between Dale and the boy, his stance rigid, eyes blazing with intensity. Dale froze. Rachel had her gun out now, aimed directly at Dale's chest. "Step back," she said coldly. "You're done." Other officers arrived shortly after. Rachel had called for backup the moment she saw the boy, and now the house was crawling with uniforms, EMTs, and Child Protective Services. As Dale was placed in handcuffs, he continued to scream about misunderstandings and discipline, but no one listened. Rex hadn't moved from the boy's side. Even as the EMTs checked him over, the dog stayed beside him like a living shield. Later, at the hospital, doctors confirmed that the boy, whose name was Ethan, had multiple untreated fractures, internal bruising, and signs of past trauma. He hadn't spoken a word to anyone. That is, until Rex walked into the room again. The moment he saw the dog, Ethan whispered, "That's my hero." Rachel stood silently, emotions threatening to break through her composure. It wasn't just that Rex had protected Ethan, it was that he had known. Somehow, on a level beyond human understanding, Rex had sensed what no one else had dared to see. Abuse had hidden in plain sight for years, but that day, justice found its voice in a German shepherd's growl. The town of Millersville buzzed with disbelief in the days following Dale Hensley's arrest. A man once seen as a hometown hero was now in custody for the brutal abuse of his own son. Whispers filled coffee shops and grocery stores. Everyone asked the same question: how had no one seen it? But for Officer Rachel Monroe, there wasn't time to dwell on public opinion. She and Rex were at the center of something much darker than a single case of abuse. Because what the boy, Ethan, had said next had left her stunned and determined to uncover the full truth. After hours of silence in the hospital, Ethan had slowly started to open up, but only when Rex was in the room. Doctors and social workers observed in awe as the child, withdrawn and shattered, began to find his voice while running his fingers through Rex's fur. Rachel visited him every day, always bringing Rex along. And during one of those quiet moments, when no one else was listening, Ethan had whispered something into Rex's ear that made the dog go still, ears perked, as if processing something. Rachel leaned in gently. "What was that, Ethan?" she asked softly. The boy looked at her, his voice barely audible. "He hurt other kids too. Not just me." Rachel's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "Who?" Ethan hesitated, then pointed to a locked box the hospital had placed with his few belongings. Inside was an old digital camera. Rachel had it examined back at the station. What she found made her stomach turn. Dozens of photos, blurry but unmistakable, of children, some bound, some bruised, inside the very same room where Ethan had been held. Dale hadn't just been an abusive father. He was something far worse. And suddenly, this wasn't just about rescuing one child. It was about uncovering a network of pain and silence that had been festering beneath Millersville's quiet surface. With a warrant in hand, Rachel returned to Dale's house to dig deeper. Rex led the way once again, sniffing every inch of the home until he stopped at the basement door. Rachel opened it slowly. The stairs creaked as she descended, the air growing colder and damper with each step. At the bottom, Rex growled low, pawing at a section of the wall behind an old tool rack. Rachel moved it aside, and found a hidden door. Inside was a soundproofed room lined with faded insulation, stained mattresses, and blooded cloth. Chains hung from the walls. A camcorder sat on a tripod in the corner. Rachel's hands shook as she gathered the evidence. How many children had suffered here? How long had this gone on? And who else had known? As investigators scoured the basement, something else surfaced, a logbook hidden beneath a floorboard. It contained names, dates, and payments. It wasn't just abuse. It was trafficking. And Dale hadn't worked alone. The implications were horrifying. Millersville, the sleepy town that prided itself on safety and strong community values, had unknowingly harbored a predator operating right under their noses. And if this logbook was accurate, Dale had contacts. People he worked with. People who might still be free and dangerous. Rachel felt rage building inside her, but she kept it locked down, channeling it into focus. She knew what she had to do next. She and Rex would track down every name in that book. Every clue. Every child. It didn't matter how far it took them or how long. Justice wasn't just about arresting one man. It was about ending every part of the chain he had built. That night, Rachel sat at her desk long after everyone else had gone home. The photos, the names, the horrors, they all swirled in her mind. Rex lay at her feet, silent and watchful. She looked down at him, remembering how it had all started with a single growl. A single refusal to let abuse stay hidden. "We've got work to do, partner," she whispered. Outside, the moon hung low over Millersville, casting long shadows across empty streets. But Rachel and Rex were done turning a blind eye. They were hunting the darkness now. And this time, it wouldn't escape unnoticed. Weeks passed, but the wound Dale Hensley left on Millersville hadn't begun to heal. What had once seemed like a closed-case abuse charge had spiraled into a statewide manhunt. The logbook uncovered in Dale's basement listed not only victims but apparent buyers, suppliers, and even locations, some shockingly close to home. For Officer Rachel Monroe, this case had transformed her from a beat cop into the lead investigator in a nightmare she never imagined. But she wasn't alone. At every step, Rex was there, more than a K-9 unit, more than a partner. He was a compass, pointing toward the truth no one else wanted to face. Every name in the logbook had to be checked, vetted, and tracked. Some turned out to be aliases. Others led to dead ends. But one name kept appearing. Charles Griffin, a retired judge living just 30 miles away in the neighboring town of Crestfield. He had a spotless public image, a long career of stern sentencing, and a list of community awards. But Dale's notes indicated multiple payments from Griffin's accounts, with delivery addresses matching properties he owned. Rachel felt the bile rise in her throat. How many monsters were wearing masks? She and Rex made the trip to Crestfield without backup, too many unknowns, too much at stake. Griffin's estate was massive, hidden behind iron gates and nestled in a grove of pines that seemed to whisper of secrets. Rachel approached carefully, her badge visible, Rex beside her, tail low, ears high. She knocked. Griffin answered in a crisp suit, grey-haired, his face the picture of warm, practiced authority. "Officer, can I help you?" he asked with a calm that made Rachel's skin crawl. "We need to ask you some questions," Rachel said, stepping forward. "May we come in?" Griffin's eyes flicked to Rex and back. Something cold passed through his expression. "I don't believe that's necessary. I have nothing to hide." "That's interesting," Rachel said, holding up a photo from Dale's logbook. "Because this child disappeared 4 years ago. And this was taken in one of your guest houses." For the briefest moment, Griffin flinched. Then he turned to slam the door, but Rex was faster. He lunged, forcing it open with a snarl that echoed through the marble halls of the estate. Rachel followed, drawing her weapon. "Down on your knees. Now." But Griffin ran. Down the hall, toward a rear wing. Rachel and Rex gave chase, turning corners through opulent corridors until Griffin made it to a locked door and fumbled with keys. Rachel tackled him to the ground, but it was Rex who held him there, his teeth bared inches from Griffin's neck until cuffs clicked shut. The locked door led to a hidden room. Inside were monitors, drives, and files. Years of footage, names, transactions. But what stopped Rachel cold was the evidence of children being held there only days earlier. The smell of recent occupation hung in the air, laundry detergent, stale food, fresh drawings taped to the walls. This hadn't ended with Dale. Griffin was another link in the chain. And he hadn't been working alone. Authorities swept in fast once Rachel sent out the call. The operation was bigger than anyone feared, stretching beyond county lines. The FBI took over, but Rachel stayed embedded. She had earned that right. Rex had led them here, after all. Over the following days, one by one, the remaining suspects named in the logbook were tracked and arrested. Children were rescued, frightened, traumatized, but alive. And each time Rachel brought Rex into a recovery scene, a strange thing happened. The children calmed. They reached for him. They clung to him. He wasn't just a police dog. He had become something sacred to them. A protector they could trust in a world that had failed them again and again. Ethan, now living with a foster family in a quiet nearby town, began speaking more. He started school. He laughed. When Rachel and Rex came to visit, he ran to them, no longer the broken shell they had found weeks ago. He had a long road ahead, but it had a future now. He wasn't alone anymore. On a rainy afternoon, Rachel stood before a packed courtroom as Dale Hensley was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Charles Griffin's trial was still pending, but the evidence was overwhelming. The silence that had cloaked these crimes for years had been shattered. And it all began with one boy and one dog. After the hearing, the judge stepped down to speak privately with Rachel. "That dog of yours. I've seen a lot in my years, but I've never seen anything like what he did. He didn't just help solve a crime. He gave those kids a reason to believe again." Rachel looked down at Rex, who sat calmly by her side, as if none of this was about him. But it was. More than anyone, it was. She smiled. He doesn't care about credit. He just listens when others won't. As she walked out of the courthouse, the sky broke open and the rain washed the town clean. Rex walked beside her, proud and silent.